Hi, everyone, and welcome to Sandra Coos Unfiltered. My name is Sandra Coos, and today I'm going to talk about ancestral trauma. But before I start, I would like to ask you to please hit the subscribe button below this video so that you do not miss any of my further videos. All right, let's get started. Ancestral trauma is a very interesting concept, simply because we don't know our ancestors. We don't know what happened, and yet intense trauma, severe limiting beliefs can still affect us to this day. Now, in my last video, I talked about generational trauma, which means the trauma that us, our parents, and grandparents can still remember, things that happened during their lifetimes. If they can still remember that, it's called generational trauma. Anything past that, so anything past, let's say, 5 generations, is considered ancestral trauma. Now, for ancestral trauma to still affect us, it has to be extremely severe. Because over time, trauma still fizzles out through the ancestral line. But if something really intense happens, it leaves an imprint. It leaves an imprint on the soul, leaves an imprint in our DNA. It goes into the energetic line of the family line, and it can be passed down to us. Now, what does that mean? For example, I had a client who had severe back pain. And she couldn't figure out where it was coming from simply because the doctor said there is nothing. Everything is fine. There's no reason whatsoever why you would have back pain. And so she was contemplating about it, and she realized that her mother had the same pain and her grandmother too, which means there was a pattern. And when there's a pattern, it means there's a repetition, of course. And if there's a repetition, there has to be a place of origin. So if several generations have the same pain in the same spot for no apparent reason, there's been trauma. And yes, ancestral trauma can show up in the form of physical pain if the trauma that was caused was physical. In this case, it was an ancestor who was in an abusive relationship. And she was pushed down by her husband on the floor, and her husband put her boot on her back to keep her down. And that caused the trauma. And since that trauma was never released and it was so severe, it was passed down the ancestral line, same pain throughout generations moving forward. Now, how did I figure this out? When we go into the ancestral line for healing, we go through the energies. Now, energy does not have space or time. It's like in the Akashic records, time doesn't exist. Everything happens simultaneously at the same time. So which means if I use my pendulum and ask away where this happened, why it happened, when it happened, so on and so forth, for my pendulum, of course, because it's connected to the energy, there is no time, there is no space. It's as if it just happened. And then as I use my pendulum to figure out what happened, I see an image or like a video, a movie pop in my head, and I see what happened, which is pretty cool. So yeah, and so I was able to figure out what happened. And you can release the trauma from your ancestral line in the same way through energy. For me, I use the Akashic records. I go into the records of my client, and in there, I request that his ancestral trauma is being released. Now, a couple days after I did this energy work with my client, she messaged me and she said that her back pain was gone. And that she was so amazed because she has never been without back pain for as long as she could remember. So you can see energy work can really be beneficial in ancestral healing. But ancestral trauma does not only affect us on the physical level or interrupt our peace of family. It can affect us in so many different things. It can still cause limiting beliefs and self-sabotaging behavior. It can cause unconscious fears, weird thought patterns. And sometimes it's a little difficult to determine whether it's ancestral or not, because so many things can affect us at the same time from different areas, from our own life, our generational past, our ancestral line. So usually, as I work with my clients and we work through their trauma and then go into the generational line and clear all that, there's usually still patterns emerging. So there's like one recurring belief that I have, for example. A lot of my clients have issue with the money mindset. So lack of money, they have to work too hard, or money is so hard to come by. These are beliefs that are being passed down through the ancestral line because these are classic beliefs, especially when you come from a family who didn't have much money to begin with, but you're trying to break out of this pattern, maybe have your own business or have a great job and want to make it in the world. But yet the money mindset always keeps you stuck. Or it could be that every time you push through and maybe offer a new product, a new coaching session, or a new online course, every time you do this, you feel like a fraud. And you have no idea why on earth you would feel that, because you were so excited until you hit the publish button. And then you feel like, oh my God, is anyone going to watch this? Are they going to buy this stuff? Do they think I don't know what? It's like all those limiting beliefs, those unconscious fears, the fear of failure and not being good enough, and all of this can still come from your ancestral line without you realizing that. So working through ancestral trauma is more important than you think, because so many things are holding you back and they're not even yours to have. Because you would think that your ancestors deal with their own trauma. Well, apparently not, because they pass it down. Just like a generational trauma from mother to daughter, from father to son, their belief system pushed forward again and again and again. But it also travels with us in our DNA, and it travels with us through the energetic line of the family. And this is so fascinating, really, because you don't know what's really holding you back. It could be 500 generations ago that something happened very traumatic and that's being passed on because it was never healed. And by the time it reaches the generational line that your family still remembers, it has been ingrained as trauma for so many generations that people forgot the root cause. But whatever runs in the family has a place of origin. Once you find that place of origin, you can release that. Because when something happens, it can easily turn into a curse. With a curse, I mean, it's like every generation goes through it again and again and again until one generation says, okay, enough, this stops with me. But in order to do that, this generation or you have to realize that what happened was a repetitive pattern. But releasing this pattern will release it for your whole ancestral line, backwards and forward, which means you release ancestral issues, you release them for your children, which means they will not have to go through that. The same with generational trauma. You release that, your children will not have to go through that. Same with your trauma. You release your trauma, your children will not have to repeat that. That's one other reason why this work is so powerful, because it affects so many people. It can change so many lives for the better. Well, there are so many things that I could tell you about ancestral healing, but I think I would sit here for hours. So I do hope you found this video interesting and that it made you think and wonder what could be hiding in your ancestral line and how that could affect you and block you from doing the things you want to do. If you have any questions, please reach out. I'll leave my email under this video. I also leave a link to my website and specifically to the Divine Ancestral Healing if you'd like to know more about it. I'm also leaving the link to my book on Amazon. Please share, link, subscribe to my YouTube channel. And always remember, Trauma is not a life sentence. You have the power to heal. Bye.